advisor in addition to being Secretary of State, and that may go on for 6 months.
Yeah, look, I think Rubio has moved from kind of this neoconservative world over to a much more MAGA, Trump-aligned foreign policy. It's been somewhat a coming of age. I think it was over Ukraine realizing the grift that was going on over there with all this money was going and where was it actually going to and where was the progress going for in the war. And then in terms of Mike Waltz, I think he's still kind of stuck in that neocon world. You know, he was a staffer for Dick Cheney way back when. And I think this has been building over time. And then this whole Signalgate thing that happened, it was someone on his staff that put that in.
Yeah, the finger's been pointed at his chief of staff, who, by the way, also left.
Yeah, and so it's just funny when that came out, the knives came out immediately for Pete Hegseth, who's had a target since the day Trump announced it on him, even though if you're the chief of something, you don't set up the group chat. You simply enter it when people do it for you, and somehow Hegseth was getting blamed for this. So I think it's a smart decision to sleep him in there. I mean, he's been on this program I don't know how many times. Like I think
Stephen Miller.
Or Mike Waltz. And I think he's a great guy. It's good to see him still in there, but not in that role specifically.
Well, we'll see. Again, he's got to go through the confirmation process, and there's going to be a lot of questions about Signalgate. So that story will continue.
Joe Biden's dementia, I do not see how she could be a credible candidate.
Mike?
Yeah, look, she is a walking dumpster fire when it comes to politics. There's no original thought. There's no ideology. It's just power, power, power. Governor of California is probably the only office she could hold because she could finagle her way into getting that nomination, and then it's a rubber stamp, which is this. Every time she's been successful, it's been fighting for that nomination and then winning a Democrat safely held seat in one way or the other. So it may be governor of California, but it's like we say dumpster fire. There is an even bigger one that is the state of California, its finances, its politics. So who knows if she wants to get involved with that.
That's why you could see California go red, and you could see a Republican governor. And California don't. And if Kamala Harris runs, that'd be good for the Republicans in California. All right, we're just getting started this morning. Coming up, futures falling. My question is, did we see a pull forward? Because we've seen that in some of the data as many companies and some consumers were trying to get ahead of tariffs.
Yeah, well, so that would be an inventory build, and some of those inventory drawdowns would be very additive later in the year. But I just never understood the calls for recession, because if we're lucky, we're going to bring in $300 to $400 billion in tariff revenue to the Treasury. Okay, but you're going to get it back in the reduction in gas prices as well as deregulation. So the math never really made sense to me. And I think from here, you're only going to get positive trade news. Obviously, Netflix is down today on this box office stuff, on this Hollywood stuff. But I seem to think all the technical indicators, all the historic factors, I think a bottom is in. I think, Gina, I saw that in your notes as well.
Yep.
Out, remember when he went out there right after the fires and he talked about the permitting process? Guess what? Barely any permits have been issued to rebuild for thousands of structures.
You know what? I got to say, I agree with her on the recalls. Right? Like, these people in California vote for all this nonsense liberal you-know-what. And then when it blows up in their faces, they're like, I can't believe this is happening. It's over and over and over again. It's like, I want a do-over of my poor decision-making before, just so I can continue with the poor decision-making in the future. They're not going to, it's Rick Caruso. Can you imagine the difference if he was the mayor of Los Angeles going through this entire process? We saw it in real time with him sending out private fire trucks. His places will get rebuilt quicker than everyone else. Like, the left does not value competence. They value governing towards an ideology, not towards results. And like, California is your example of that. Like, whether it's
and by the way, the housing costs in California are off the charts high, highest in the nation. And one of the reasons is they can't get through the environmental thicket and the permitting problem to actually build anything. They can't build a high-speed rail train. They can't rebuild these houses. I mean, this is an appalling failure.
And that's what Nicole Shanahan and many others.
Look, if you are here illegally, you do not have the same rights as an American. Okay, a deportation is a civil act, not a criminal act. And Bill Clinton signed a law in the 90s that said specifically, if you're being deported, you do not get a trial. Okay, if we're going to lock someone up in jail and we're going to accuse them of murder or theft or what have you, that's a completely separate process. Deportation is a civil act, and these people up in arms about the deportation of MS-13 gang members, okay, just goes to show you they don't care about civil rights. Okay, there are people that wandered in the Capitol building in front of police officers, took selfies with them, that sat in solitary confinement for over a year in pre-trial detention. Not a peep from a single person on the left and a lot of Republicans about what went on. This is selective outrage because they want illegals here so they can vote in elections and change the country.
Well,
if we deported all the illegals, the Republicans would end up with, I think, an additional 27 congressional seats. That is why we don't want to deport people.
I think the most interesting thing that he said, too, I want to go back to what the president said, was that about the fact that it would take, you would need 200.
Really wish he left that third-term door open because it would really be a lot of fun to have just keep trolling and trolling and trolling a lot longer. But at a certain point of time, like, you can't keep running the jokes.
Well, but also, you know what, he was asked about his legacy, and she asked him, will MAGA survive without you? Is there a future for MAGA when you are gone? And he said, absolutely. We have changed the country. We have reshaped politics, reshaped the Republican Party, replaced the Republican Party, basically.
I think J.D. Vance is absolutely in the pole position, and I think that comes particularly because of J.D. Vance's story and his politics. And so when he got the nomination, there was all this criticism, and he's weird. Like, and who is this guy? Is he really qualified? Like, if Ron Howard makes a movie about your life story, you're probably a pretty interesting guy. You can probably captivate the United States of America, okay? And just everything about him, it works because he speaks so much on just not an aggressive tone the way Donald Trump is. He's just not as confrontational, but he's much more steadfast from a policy perspective. He's a lot more of a hardliner from an ideological, from a policy standpoint, but he does it with a much, much nicer tone, which is a unique combination. And you're never going to have another Donald Trump, and leaders should not try to be Donald Trump. You should be genuine to who you are. And I think J.D. Vance has got that genuineness that comes across with the way that he feels about certain issues, and he's not trying to placate anyone. And he's most likely got like a 140 or 150 IQ, one of the really smart guys.
I think he's very smart.
Walking around, and it's just, he talks like a normal person, not like some brainiac weirdo.
Well, let's stay with 2028 here for a second, because Democrats remain skeptical about. Otherwise, it's which Republicans are probably saying, well, good luck, stay right where you are. Kamala Harris, run again for 2028.
Look,
bring it on.
If congressional Republicans could just get on board with the Trump agenda and actually act, you're looking at a 40 to 50 year majority. The modern Democratic Party is just a failure in every single aspect. All right, they stand for nothing, they have nothing, they are on the wrong side of every single issue. Okay, if we could get the budget deficit under control and we could start getting some accountability to these lawless judges, okay, and just push this Trump agenda, you are looking at massive House control. I mean, the Democrats had control of the House from the 1930s to 1992. The Republicans are looking at something like that right now, and it's all right there in front of them. The only speed bump I see are congressional Republicans just not getting their act together.
Yeah, you're seeing that in the chatter right now.
I was looking at this quote from Senator Richard Blumenthal. They need new leadership. He said, Harris remains an attractive and effective public figure who would have support if she runs. New leadership is needed in the Democratic Party. Let's be honest here. And we've got earnings from Paramount Global and from Disney this week. So that's going to be interesting. They're going to be asked about it, obviously, on the conference call. How's this going to go?
Because so both those companies have a litany of issues above and beyond what's going to go on with these tariffs. But look, as we look at the market on a whole, this rally that we've had, these 9-day winning streak we've had in the market, there's been 30-something of them. Only 2 have had a recession follow after. Most of the time, this is a very, very positive sign. And when you peel the layer back and you look at the prime brokerage stats from across the Wall Street, the amount of net equity exposure, so how long hedge funds are, how invested they are in the market, you're at multi-year lows.
Yeah.
Okay, and they are at decade lows in terms of their investments in their long-only exposure to the Mag 7 names. So if we get some more strength in there, you're going to see some panic buying from these large hedge funds to chase performance, as well as mutual funds. I think market's going to really take off from here.
Well, Palantir's after the bell. And I know you hate the stock.
Yes. Yeah, look, I think it'll be up substantially. If for some reason it sells off, I'm going to buy as much as I humanly possibly can.
Mike Lee likes Palantir a lot. All right.
Love it.
Secret. Exactly. Liz Peek, Michael Lee, thank you so much for joining me. Maria's